In today's video I'm going to cover all the tips you need to have in mind when picking up a gaming laptop for Black Friday in 2019, and in the video description down below you will find the best gaming laptop deals for entry, mid and high-end gaming. And so regardless if you're looking for a cheaper 1080p machine or a killer 4K beast, you'll find the best deal to fit your budget down in the video description. This video is recorded a few days prior to Black Friday, and so I'm going to update the video description with more and more deals as we're getting closer to Black Friday. I'm going to scan Amazon for the best available deal as they become available, so if you're watching this video on Black Friday, the video description should be packed with the best deals for your budget. And so with this video, what I will be focusing on is giving you the best general tips to have in mind when purchasing a gaming laptop, so that you won't end up disappointed with low frame rate, stutter and lag as a result. With that all said, let's start with the processor or the CPU. So when it comes to the CPU in a gaming laptop, you should look for a processor from Intel first and foremost, and more specifically you should look for the Core i7. Now in 2020 more and more games are gonna be more optimized to handle a lot more cores and threads. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a very good example of a game that benefits a freaking ton of having lots of cores to play with. Even Red Dead Redemption 2 saw a nice boost with more than 4 cores, and with PS5 and Xbox Scarlet around the corner, we know that next generation consoles will be based on Ryzen, and so I highly recommend you to look for a processor with at least 6 cores if you have a big enough budget. That all being said, even the Core i5 should potentially be worth looking into. Now something to be aware of though is that in most cases the bottleneck in a laptop is in most cases not the processor but almost always the graphics card, and so if you have a very strict limited budget, you want to look for a laptop with the best possible graphics card for the price. Now before we look at what graphics card to look for, here are a few things to have in mind when it comes to the processor. Older CPUs from Intel's 7000 series, for example, also known as Kaby Lake, the Core i5 7300HQ only has 4 cores and are also lacking hyperthreading. The newer 8000 series on the other hand, also known as Coffee Lake, the Core i5 8300H for example, which is a very popular processor on gaming laptops. Because of Intel's upgrade on the 8000 series, this processor has something called hyperthreading, and hyperthreading or SMT will affect the gaming performance and will give you a noticeable boost in frames per second in many games today, but even more games in the future. So this is definitely something you want to opt for. Because of Intel's recent updates on the processor side, I highly recommend you to avoid the 7th series altogether and opt for the 8th, 9th or the 10th series, which are newer and better processors. But yeah, we need to talk about AMD also. So with Ryzen Mobile, they should be back in the game, right? Yes and no. AMD is still a few years away from the same level of gaming performance and IPC to compete with Intel on mobile, and so unless you know what you're looking for, you should pick Intel over AMD unless you find a very good laptop deal with a very powerful graphics card. And again, I'm going to link up the best deals available, and so you don't have to worry about that. Now before we jump over to the graphics card, a quick summary here. For the processor, you should pick Intel first and foremost. You should look for a processor with 6 cores and hyperthreading if your budget allows it. Again, you want to pick Intel over AMD unless you're getting the laptop for a very compelling price tag. And as a reminder, for gaming, the graphics card is far more important than the processor in the end of the day. So with that said, let's move on to probably the most important piece of hardware when it comes to a gaming machine. I'm obviously talking about the graphics card, and the GPU is generally the single most expensive component in the laptop, and the most powerful GPU in a laptop costs thousands of dollars. So you wanna be smart here. Now since the launch of Sony PlayStation 4 Pro and Microsoft Xbox One, game developers are constantly pushing what's possible in games, and so minimum requirements in games nowadays have moved up quite a lot as a result. Now as for the current generation, we know that the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 5 Pro, I would take a quick look at the current generation right now. We can see that the PS4 Pro for example has got 8GB of VRAM, and the Project Scorpio aka the Xbox One X got a total of 12GB. Now generally when it comes to more budget friendly price point, you will typically find laptops with Nvidia GeForce GTX 1050 or the GTX 1050 Ti, and even though this is a budget graphics card, unless you're aiming for 1440p or 4K, the 1050 with 4GB worth of VRAM should be enough for most AAA games in 1080 or Full HD. If you have a bit more to spend, the GTX 1060 or better yet the 1650 or the 1660 are definitely more powerful options, and because they are more powerful, it's going to keep your laptop relevant for a lot longer. But yeah, with that said, let's talk about the video memory. So yeah, the GTX 1050 comes with both 2GB and 4GB, and to be frank, the 4GB version is the only one to consider, as 2GB is simply not gonna be enough to play on in 2020. Not having enough VRAM creates something called microstutter and freezes and potential hiccups, and if you've ever experienced this, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It makes the game unplayable and it freaking sucks, so you wanna avoid this at all costs. Now, if you happen to find a gaming laptop with a GTX 1060, you wanna look at how much VRAM that graphics card has, cause it turns out that even the 1060 also comes with two set of specifications as well. We got 3GB and we got 6GB, whereas 6 is the one to prefer, but 3 gigs is in many cases still a viable option for 1080p gaming. If you decide to go for a GTX 1060 with 6GB of VRAM, you now also have the option of stepping up in resolution, giving you the chance to game at 1440p for example, and in this case, if you have enough cash to spend for a 1060 with 6 gigs of VRAM, it might as well be worth jumping over to 1660 or the 1660 Ti or even the RTX 2060, and this will allow for gaming in 1440p and even 4K with a few less demanding titles. But yeah, the most advanced graphics card is still the GTX 1080 or the RTX 2080, and these are beasts among graphics cards in gaming laptops. These are more extreme and not very common, and they often cost more than what people are ready to pay, and they're not offering the best price and performance. Now, something we also need to talk about is NVIDIA Max-Q. So there is a handful of NVIDIA GPUs that comes with this Max-Q naming, and it is important to understand what it means, and it has a significant impact on the size of the laptop, the temperature and the performance. So what does it mean? Now, by default you would probably think that it means better performance, but in reality it is the opposite. So graphics card with the Max-Q naming have a slightly lower clock speed, and they are more optimized towards better power consumption and lower temperatures, and as a result it can give the laptop with the Max-Q GPU a more compact and thinner design as a result. But again, it comes with a slight drawback, and you should expect around 15% less performance compared to a non-Max GPU, but at the same time you're getting about 30 to 40% less power consumption, which will give you a cooler laptop as a result. And many brands utilize the cooler temperature to make slimmer and thinner chassis, and so if you're specifically looking for a powerful gaming machine without having to sacrifice the portability or the weight, picking up a Max-Q branded GPU from NVIDIA can be a very strong argument for you. But yeah, what about the red team then? How does AMD and Radeon perform in this department? AMD is still behind a bit, and it shouldn't be something that you should typically consider unless you know what you're after. NVIDIA is still the first option to game on as of right now. When it comes to the primary memory, 8GB of RAM is enough for most AAA games right now, but the minimum requirements are constantly being pushed, and with next generation consoles around the corner, 16GB will become mainstream with a few years time, and so even though 8GB is fine right now, it is still a minimum requirement in many cases, and so if your wallet can handle it, 16GB is what I like to recommend. But it should be said, 8GB is definitely enough right now. When it comes to storage, there are a few things you need to take into account. Games do take up a ton of space, many games being 100GB plus. This is why I don't recommend picking up a gaming laptop with only 128 or 240GB. You want to make sure you have at least 1TB worth of storage in addition to that. Last but not least, we got the screen right. Basically, I cover everything you need to know about the gaming monitors in a video I did a few days ago. I highly recommend having a look at that video. Find that video in the description box. Still, I got a few things I want to say here. Today we have gaming laptops supporting 144Hz and also something called adaptive sync, also known as NVIDIA G-Sync. Both 144Hz and adaptive sync are more premium like features, and they add quite a lot to the price tag. Now if you have a very strict budget and you want as much bang for the buck so to speak, generally these features may not be worth it for you. But if you can afford it, it is definitely something that you want to consider for a more fluid and a richer experience. But yeah, the monitor is very important, therefore I highly recommend checking out my video covering what to look for in a gaming monitor. Again, you find that video down below. Again guys, I want to stress the fact that the video description will get updated with more deals as Black Friday unfolds. Something we also need to mention is that streaming games is also becoming increasingly popular, and nowadays huge companies such as Google and Microsoft are both offering services where you simply hire compute power from them to run your favorite game on any device, and this completely eliminates the need of a beefy CPU or a graphics card. It does however require you to have a high-speed internet connection with unlimited data, and so for that reason, if you're looking for a laptop to stream to, I'm going to link up options for that as well. Now in case you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm gonna do my best to help you guys out. In the meantime, watch either of these two videos for more awesome content. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, have an awesome day.